the horrific ordeal that my mother continues to face for 6.5 years. On the surface, it appears that the guardianship system is designed to protect the rights of vulnerable individuals. However, it's a system that is susceptible to abuse by unscrupulous court-appointed guardians, care managers, attorneys, and power of attorneys who are engaging in abuse for the sole purpose of financially exploiting aging adults, and they're using the system as a vehicle to financially exploit vulnerable individuals. So imagine waking up one day only to find that you are suddenly blocked complete access to your loved one without any evidence of wrongdoing whatsoever. Inconceivably, this type of event is becoming a common occurrence in the United States of America. And the practice of isolating vulnerable individuals from their loved ones is tearing American families apart. Presently, in the New York State legislature, there isn't any legal mechanism in place to protect the rights of vulnerable individuals and their loved ones from this type of guardianship abuse. And the truth is, unless you have gone through the elder care system yourself and you've experienced the horrific nightmare and the torment that it causes both you and your loved ones, you can't even begin to comprehend the level of torment that it causes. So there are numerous guardianship abuse cases reported every year in the state of New York, in addition to a substantial amount of research that outlines the negative impact that isolation has on vulnerable individuals. And sadly, due to the deprivation and over-medication of these individuals, they deteriorate rapidly, both physically and mentally, and they often suffer premature death before they're ever freed from the system. So the fact that right now in the state of New York, a guardian can just arbitrarily block visitation and hold a vulnerable individual in isolation without having to go to court and present clear and convincing evidence is really unconscionable. And in the case of my mother, when I was blocked access suddenly, I tried to resolve the situation amicably, but I didn't get anywhere. So I had no other choice but to seek relief in the guardianship court system. And I was appalled and horrified at the injustices that were occurring by 3 court-appointed individuals that were holding my mother in complete isolation while they paid themselves thousands upon thousands of dollars every month to do that. So my mother was held in a jail-like isolation in several different assisted living facilities where she was denied complete access to the outside world. Virtually all of her personal property and belongings were confiscated from her. Her clothing, shoes, telephone, jewelry, furniture, wallet, money, dishes, even her photographs of her family in picture frames. She was not allowed to receive letters, packages, mail, or food delivery. And she was blocked complete access to her entire family, friends, and only grandchild without ever having an evidentiary hearing, without due process, and without giving notice of any hearings being held. So this type of isolation is similar to what we see captors use on their prisoners of war to dehumanize them and break them down both physically and mentally and get them to comply. How is this possibly happening in the state of New York to our vulnerable individuals? And sadly, nobody is immune from guardianship abuse, as we clearly see right now in the state of New York with Wendy Williams, who just went on Power 105.1 last week and TMZ, pleading for help, saying she feels like she's in jail, she can't see her loved ones, or she can, but it's restricted, and that they can't contact her. She's in a locked ward. She has $15 to her name. So I'm hoping that this bill will pass quickly and we can enact it into law and free everyone who's vulnerable in the United States or in the state of New York, and also give Wendy Williams the relief that she is seeking today. So thank you very much. I want to introduce Senator Palumbo. Thank you.
Great, thank you. You're now going to hear from Ilana Musakar. Is that said correctly?
Ilana Musakar.
Musakar. Come on in, Ilana. Please tell us your story.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ilana Musakar. I am an attorney in the state of New York, as is my husband, and if this can happen to me and my family, it can happen to you as well, unfortunately. My disabled brother, Joseph, has received veiled threats as they relate to my mother, who's in an abusive guardianship in Chicagoland in a locked memory care ward with no medical proof. In addition, he received these threats as it relates to my aunt in Brooklyn, who is a victim of elder abuse by her own attorney and power of attorney, and clergy nonetheless. The original perpetrators here were actually my brother-in-law's sister and family, but now it appears that anybody related to my mother and, or almost anybody related to my mother and my aunt's situation is also involved in this, including, upon information and belief, the court and all those connected with the court. In addition, our telephone communication has been blocked now for several months with both my mother and my aunt, and I am facing jail time, including because I bought my mother a plane ticket when she's on the court transcript or the court record saying that she wishes to return to New York, her home state. I thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ilana. Now we're going to bring on Jonathan Farley.
"You're breaking my arm," my mother screamed as they tied up her hands and feet and dragged her out of her house. No doctor had said she was mentally incompetent. No judge had said she was mentally incompetent. She was taken to a memory care facility in Arundecourt, New York, Senator Brooks' district, and not allowed to make phone calls, not allowed to choose her own visitors, not allowed to choose an attorney, and she was drugged against her will. I know that if Carolyn's law had been in effect, I could have walked into the memory care facility, my mother could have changed her power of attorney, and she and I would be sitting in our home right now. Instead, she died alone on a narrow bed in a memory care facility.
Wow. Thank you, Jonathan. And so when you hear these stories, this is not unique to Florida and New York. We're hearing about these nationwide. And I have a colleague here, in this, George Borrello from Western New York, who has similar stories that took place in his district, because unfortunately these abuses are rampant. I'm going to introduce Senator George Borrello to say a few words.
Thank you, Senator Palumbo, and thank you, Christine, for your being such a champion for this cause. I actually first heard about this because I saw an online petition, Free Peter Max. Peter Max is an artist, a famous artist who I admire and collect his work, and I wanted to know, what's this mean, Free Peter Max? Well, it turns out he is in an abusive guardianship situation, and his daughter, Libra, not allowed to see him. This is a story that impacts celebrities. We see these stories, but the reality is it impacts so many people. There are 28,000 people in New York State that are in guardianships right now. Those guardians are allowed to make decisions about their health care, which medications they can and cannot take, who they can see, who they can talk to, who they can hear from. These guardians are a very small group of people. It seems to be something that's a bit of a cottage industry for attorneys that are actually taking money from the estates of these families to pay their own bills, essentially, and drain those accounts while denying those folks that are in guardianship access to their loved ones. It is cruel and inhumane. Attorney General James has launched an investigation into this. This is a system here in New York that is corrupt and needs to be changed. But most importantly, we have to do it for those folks that are suffering without access to their loved ones, without being able to hear the voice of their family members, make decisions about the rest of their remaining years. It's tragic. It's tragic to hear stories about your mother, both of your mothers, who could be living better lives were it not for the guardians profiting from their pain. That has to stop. We have to reform guardianship, and we have to pass Carolyn's Law this year. Thank you, Senator Palumbo, for your leadership.
Thank you, George. Sure. Christine would like to say something else?
I just wanted to say that my mother was born and raised in New York. She grew up on Governor's Island. It was an army base at the time. Her father, my grandfather, served the United States Army for 30 years, and he fought in World War II. She grew up on Governor's Island. So the fact that my grandfather fought tirelessly and selflessly for 30 years for our country's freedom and our rights, it is so ironic that right now my mom is being held as a prisoner and she's being denied her rights and her due process rights and being held as a prisoner of war in a guardianship. This really must change. It's very upsetting.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine and Senator Borrello, who is a co-sponsor of this legislation. And you know, these are not anecdotal stories. They almost sound as if they're untrue or embellished. And that's what's so insane about the current system, that in the state of New York in 2025, we have a system where these abuses are actually sanctioned by the system. These people haven't done anything wrong. They're suffering from some health issues. And they're held as if they're prisoners. They're dragged out of their homes. They're dragged to a different state and refused access by their family members and loved ones. It sounds insane. And in this state in particular, when we give more rights to actual criminals than we're giving to wards who need medical services and need to see their loved ones and get a hug once in a while. So this is something that is just common sense. And at the end of the day, yes, we're here primarily because now the Attorney General's paying attention. We're reintroducing this legislation one more time. And, you know, the Wendy Williams case is top of mind. That, you know what, sometimes these tragedies have to occur publicly or maybe to a celebrity of some kind before the legislature gets moving. But we are in agreement on both sides of the aisle. This needs to be fixed. And this is such an easy fix. It's not removing guardians. It's still maintaining the general system that's in place before we can make more significant reforms. But this just simply allows access to justice. So I appreciate you all being here. Thank you all for coming here to tell us your story. Hang in there. And if there are any questions, we're certainly happy to take them. Okay, very good. Thank you.